And judges, would you please introduce yourselves?
Sure, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Barnhart. I'm currently in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm an attorney. I practice in the Indiana Attorney General's office. I do consumer protection work, and I'm looking forward to hearing your testimony here today.
Hi, I'm Marcia Holland. I'm an attorney in Missoula, Montana. I was a career public defender up in Fairbanks, Alaska, but now I moved back to Montana and I teach at the law school here on Zoom. So I'm excited for this opportunity to interact with you all and keep this competition going. I've been involved for about 30 years, so I'm really excited.
Good afternoon. My name is Becca Steinhoff. I am the Executive Director of the John P. L. Bogan Foundation, and I am joining today from Casper, Wyoming. I'm delighted to be with you all and looking forward to hearing from you.
And if you would introduce yourselves.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, judges. We are Unit 6 from Grant High School in Portland, Oregon. We hope you are well today. My name is Lux Sanchez.
My name is Tommy Meyer.
My name is Orion Fisher.
My name is Maya Feldman-Dragic.
My name is Maeve Larco, and this is our teacher, Misty Pasquale.
All right. Welcome, welcome. I will read the question. Give you time for your opening statement. What are the philosophical and historical foundations of the American political system? The American war is over. Oh, sorry. Unit 1, you're not doing that. I had to restart that. My apologies. Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes noted that life in a state of nature is a solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. How has the human condition changed over time? And how is that change reflected in our expectations of government? Should the principles of natural rights or classical republicanism guide policy changes designed to improve the condition of all people? What are the most pressing domestic and global challenges facing Americans today and in the future? What policies can you suggest to address them? You may begin.
The first governments were formed to protect from the violence that consumed the Hobbesian state of nature, improving the human condition. In the past 5 centuries especially, the human condition has made great bounds and expectations of government have quickly followed. Martin Luther's Reformation, during a time of pandemic and political crisis, shifted focus from the church to the state, setting the stage for the scientific revolution that would produce vaccines and antibiotics. The Industrial Revolution then expanded global trade and opened routes for European economic prosperity. However, crucial to Europe's rapid development was the exploitation of Africa, Asia, and the Americas, centers of vibrant economic and social prosperity. As the human condition developed, expectations of government quickly evolved to include access to education, healthcare, equality, public works, and a stable economy.
Classical republicanism prioritizes the common good rather than individual freedom and was based on a culture of devotion to civic virtue in small, homogeneous communities. The classical republican method of achieving policy for the betterment of all people requires circumstances and sacrifice impossible to replicate in modern America. On the other hand, John Locke's natural rights philosophy, which most heavily influenced the framers, focuses on the government's responsibility to protect individual freedom. However, the adversarial nature of such a government makes this ethos problematic in framing policy for the betterment of all people.
We believe that for the betterment of all people, enlightened self-interest should guide policy in the US today. French political philosopher Alexis de Tocqueville observed in the 1830s that Americans had embraced this philosophy, the idea that when individual and common interests align, society prospers. Today, Americans must reinvigorate the spirit of enlightened self-interest to address current collective challenges.
Today, millions of Americans are affected by inequality, racism, and a lack of access to food, healthcare, and shelter. The greatest obstacle to adopting policy to solve these challenges is dysfunction in our democracy, making this our most pressing domestic challenge. Money in politics, the filibuster, and voter suppression make policy designed to benefit all people difficult to pass. This year alone, Republicans have introduced over 250 voter suppression bills in 43 states. Congress must counter these efforts by passing the For the People Act to protect voting rights for all Americans. The Senate must also eliminate the filibuster that has protected minoritarian rule.
The international climate catastrophe looming on the horizon is the most pressing global challenge for Americans. 25 million people are displaced each year due to skyrocketing global temperatures intensifying droughts, and rising sea levels. The United States must pass a Green New Deal and aim for below net carbon emissions by 2035. Congress must also utilize its taxing powers outlined in Article 1, Section 8 to impose a wealth tax to fund these programs. Global poverty is another major challenge for Americans as poverty increases instability and refugee flows. 1 in 5 children live in extreme poverty, and the situation is only worsening due to the deteriorating climate and the pandemic. The United States must coordinate with other countries to implement the UN Sustainable Development Goal of zero global poverty by 2030.
As President Roosevelt described, the test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much. It is whether we provide enough for those who have too little. Thank you, and we are ready for your questions.
Excuse me, thank you very much. So as you're probably aware, we're living in an ever polarized world. And in order to get any action moving forward, do you have any suggestions to how to encourage the United States, to just start with our own country or even your own community, to be less polarized, or to at least listen to people you don't agree with? Any suggestions?
Boosting civic virtue is a really important solution for this issue. Alexis de Tocqueville recognized that money and time were the 2 most pressing issues that kind of impeded people's ability to interact and participate in local organizations and volunteer associations and such. And so the government's ability to pass policy that kind of lifts these burdens, such as national health care or national child care and other such things, would help give people more time and the ability to participate in these organizations that foster a sense of community.
The internet has also played a really important role in creating this polarization that you described, particularly through the creation of echo chambers on social media, in which people are only exposed to information and views that mirror their own. And so we would propose kind of changing these algorithms used by social media, as well as encouraging people to seek out information that's different from the views that they hold on their own.
Additionally, civics education has been on the decline for a long time, sort of been replaced with an increase in emphasis on STEM programs. And so we would also recommend increasing civics education, increasing history in classrooms, to give students a well-rounded understanding of United States history and politics, and encourage people to look at both sides.
This idea of polarization also has led to some tensions between the federal government and the state governments. So what is the balance in some of the policies that you're proposing between the role of the federal government and the state governments in promoting or advancing the human condition?
In our current system of federalism, states can have the ability to act as laboratories for democracy, essentially places where policies can be experimented and see how well they work out. For example, in Oregon, our home state, the practice of mail-in voting has been in place for decades, and it's resulted in 78% voter turnout in the last election, 12% higher than the federal election. And other places such as Los Angeles County, which just implemented a UBI, Universal Basic Income system, for 2,000 different residents for $1,200 a month, is another place that we can start to look at perhaps what we can do for federal policy.
Alexis de Tocqueville also writes that the success of American democracy starts at our local governments. And as Robert Putnam has identified in his book, Bowling Alone, social capital has been on the decline for a long time in our country. And so focus on the local government is essential to improving our democracy. Focusing on state government is essential. As outlined in the 10th Amendment, states have this excess power to do what they want and fund and support their communities.
However, states are not the solution to everything, such as, for example, climate change. California has passed multiple different pieces of policy legislation that are very progressive and have really set the standard nationally. However, if we don't work together at a national level to create a high emission or a low emission standards and other kind of climate policy, such as putting emphasis on renewable resources and such, states can't solve the issue alone. And so we must work together at a national level as well.
And that relates to Thomas Hobbes when Thomas Hobbes described the state of nature as solitary. When we fail to take on collective challenges as a unified nation and not as individual states, we fail to remove ourselves from many of the ills of the state of nature. This can be seen throughout the civil rights era when many southern states trailed the federal government with civil rights legislation, and then the federal government had to step in, creating a more unified and more equal nation.
I'd like to go back to the echo chamber problem and would be interested in hearing how you solve that problem in light of the fact that the social media companies own those algorithms and they run them, and what role does the government play in that process?
One of the main aspects that actually promotes this sort of echo chamber is the ability for the algorithm. It's a very daunting word, but it's the artificial intelligence that runs these programs such as Twitter and Instagram and Facebook to promote pages and promote tweets and Facebook posts to you that reflect only what they think you're interested in. And it's really a product of the marketization and privatization of every aspect of life. So to solve this idea of the echo chamber, we should expand not only what my colleagues mentioned before, civics education and enlightened self-interest, civic virtue, but also work on changing this algorithm that the private companies do to promote their advertisements and promote what they think you will like.
And kind of in a more real world setting, outside of this kind of virtual reality that is social media, which has led to a lot of individualism, getting people out kind of into the streets, into public areas is really important. Scholar Jane Jacobs suggests that investing in public spaces such as libraries, bigger sidewalks for more social interaction, parks and recreation and such like that can really boost that sense of community and in a more kind of real and tangible way.
And to curb the spread of misinformation on these social media sites, it's important to note that these private companies really have the most power. And so urging social media platforms like Twitter or like Instagram to sort of flag tweets or flag information that may not be fact-checked or fact-checking information. We saw that during the presidential election this year, where Twitter flagged some of President Trump's tweets if they were sort of ill-informed or not necessarily accurate.
So hopefully getting one more question in. The fairness doctrine, which required that more traditional media like radio and television had to be balanced, at least that had to present the other side, or at least a portion of the information, or fact checked. It's been a decade now since that law has been in effect. Do you think Congress should reenact that law? And if so, can it be applied to social media now too?
Absolutely. That law was really influential. And I think part of the reason we're seeing this hyperpolarization right now is because a lot of people, even when they look at news outlets, are really only looking at one news source. And so this can lead to a lot of bias. And it's really up to the individual to kind of look to a variety of different perspectives. And that's not something that everybody does willingly. And so encouraging those, let me finish my thought, those programs to show those different perspectives on their own would help create a more well-rounded perspective.
Thank you. And thank you all.
That's nicely done. Wonderful job. Abby, you covered the gamut in terms of your range and your examples. And I really appreciate not only the examples that you use, but your thoughtfulness and the deliberateness in which you've thought about them. And it kind of helps us kind of understand just how much you understand. So I certainly appreciate that. I really appreciate the answer to the in-person question. right? It's a very complicated question about, in terms of government's interaction with these algorithms and the social media and the echo chamber. But one of the ways that we can get around that is having more in-person interaction and to meet with each other physically and face-to-face rather than on the internet or on our devices. So well done. Good job.
I just want to keep talking with you for about another 2 hours because so many of your ideas are fascinating. Recognizing that problems facing the nation with national childcare, that's really insightful. Recognizing that civic education versus STEM education are almost in competition, and yet they're both so valuable. I would love to keep talking with you as high school students about that, talking about states as laboratories of democracy, and even bringing it down to a local level, bigger sidewalks, more libraries. Just a really great job. You really had a depth and breadth to your presentation, both in the prepared comments and in answers to our questions, that only wants me to keep talking with you more. So great job, everybody.
I echo so much of what has been said, including the desire to have more time with you. There was such a strong sense of coherence between your prepared remarks through your questions that really resonated from the examples that you provided that are local, national, global. And so just some incredible knowledge and insight that you shared with us today. It can be really difficult with this large of a team to have participation, but you have this sense of teamness where you did it and it worked really, really well. And you balanced each other out, I think, in a way that was thoughtful, intentional. So thank you for paying mind to that as well. So just so many wonderful things to say. You've clearly prepared, you are knowledgeable, and you did a really excellent job. Thank you.
And I like the new word, teamness. Teamness.